Hey, thanks for coming back to the channel. One of the highlights of our time at the NAMM show in January was meeting with Karl Winkler. You might know him from the wealth of Pro SoundWeb magazine articles he's written over the years, his talks on wireless technology at events like AES, and from his work at Lectrosonics, where he serves as Vice President of Sales and Service. They had a busy show with lots of artist appearances in their booth, including members of bands like Whitesnake, Great White, Winger, and Scrap Metal. But luckily, we were able to find a break in the action to talk for just a few minutes. It's really fun to be at trade shows and to see entire product lineups at once and experience them firsthand. With so much going on and so much to see all around, though, it's really not an easy place to have an in-depth discussion. After talking in the booth, I knew I had to find a way to dig a bit deeper with Karl and share some of his experience and perspective with you. Now, before heading to the show, the team at Lectrosonics sent over one of their fully loaded SRC-based digital hybrid kits for us to check out here on the channel. My original plan was to do a first look and general overview video. After all, a critical review of gear at this level after only a month of use would be a bit silly. I hope you'll stick around now as we try something new here on the channel. This is a format we'll be exploring more this year in an effort to turn the camera outwards and highlight some of the impressive work being done in the industry. With that, I'd like to welcome to the channel for the first of hopefully many times, Vice President of Sales and Service and Chief Potato Cannon Operator at Lectrosonics, Mr. Karl Winkler.
Good morning.
Hey, Karl, how's it going?
Okay, let's see here. And I got a camera too. So.
Oh, cool. Even better.
Yeah, there we go.
One of my big questions is just if there's anything that people should know about this system coming from traditional systems. A lot of folks I work with are used to Shure, the Axient, the UR4D systems. Yeah. And what is it about the digital hybrid that really makes a difference?
Well, from our point of view, we came from the film and TV industry where, dialogue is king and reliability is paramount. If you're doing like a film production, you can't do retakes and retakes and retakes if you hear a little bit of a tick in the audio or, a dropout and that kind of thing. So we've always come from the point of view of wireless that just has to work. Whether it's on a set outside in downtown Manhattan or Los Angeles or out in the middle of nowhere, and also, imagine taking a film crew out to some remote place and, you've got to have the stuff work. So that's always been what it is. So tough enclosures and all that. So the digital hybrid really came out of the desire to improve audio from what was before, which was companded analog audio. And our 200 series is probably one of the top analog systems. It was a dual band companded, literally crossover type compander, very high end, sounded amazing. But as time went on and sort of digital ideas were beginning to emerge, we started looking at how can we keep the strengths that are known to FM radio, in a sense, or FM wireless systems, that was really all there was at that time, but push the audio quality further. And I know a lot of companies were exploring those ideas. They were looking into using DSPs for companders. They were looking into multi-band companding up to 10 bands, that kind of stuff. And one of our engineers came up with this idea of using a predictive algorithm, kind of like some of the other places you might see that are like Cedar, audio noise reduction and things like that, coming out of, let's say, LP and tape transcription world and, things like that. So he came upon the idea of using this predictive algorithm to take apart what's coming into the transmitter in a digital fashion using a DSP and deciding what could be transmitted and what didn't need to be transmitted. So that's really what digital hybrid is. It's looking at the periodic and the aperiodic elements in the sound that's coming in and transmitting only the aperiodic and reconstructing the periodic at the other end. So this is obviously using some pretty high-end algorithms. And the other part of it, of course, would have to be that the latency couldn't be very high. So despite a lot of processing happening, latency had to be low enough to be practical for any wireless purpose. And that was a real challenge because digital hybrid, unlike, let's say, today you see pure digital systems that digitize the audio, transmit it in a digital modulation, and then demodulate it at the other end. Hybrid digitizes it, processes it, puts it back into analog format, transmits it over FM, picks it up at the other end, and then processes it again. So it's very easy to have 5-6 milliseconds of latency. In fact, some digital systems that are pure digital have that kind of latency. So we had to keep it low. So that really the tricks were, how do you maximize that FM transmission pipeline with the best audio you can do, and how do you keep the latency manageable? I think they did a pretty amazing job, because it's 3 milliseconds latency, which is low by any standards, and yet it has the digital sound quality. So it's not really a companded system. It's using a predictive algorithm. So there's a lot of interesting things going on with it. In terms of practical use, which is maybe more your question, it's not that much different than any other wireless system. You need to find radio carriers that are clean, channels that are clean, and you need to use frequency coordination like you would with a FM type system. But what you find is that the range is generally superior to analog and even a lot of digital systems. And yet it has that kind of digital sound. It's non-companded. It's very, very clean, very flat, very low noise. So it just really kind of is the best of both analog and digital in a lot of ways. That's really the goal, and how we succeeded with digital hybrid. I think it's 17 now. I think we've hired a couple more since that video was made a couple years back. And, this has always been an engineering-driven company. So in a sense, it's one of the biggest departments in terms of its, cost, to the company, but also in terms of what happens.
Sure.
This is not a big marketing-driven company with a big marketing department. Our marketing department is literally 3 people. Correct. And sales is pretty stripped down as well. So engineering compared to that is a large part of the company. The only other larger part really is production. The fact that everything is made here. So we have machinists and a plastics guy and, electronics, fabrication, assembly, testing, all that stuff is here. So engineering is really only second to that, which says a lot. Sure. I mean, electrical engineering degree is central really to what any of our engineers are doing here. But beyond that, if you start to specialize, I think it's pretty obvious that wireless everything, is on the horizon. So even if you don't end up in the professional audio industry, there's, wireless is just absolutely key to any future electronics products, I would say. And then, DSP and FPGA, if you want to specialize in those. I mean, DSPs have been around a long time, but I've been saying it the last couple of years, we're in the golden era now where the hardware is really not the limitation. It's more about what can you do with it? How can you be creative with DSPs? And we're seeing some amazing stuff. And then FPGAs are really, the emerging thing in the last few years is these blank slate chips that, if you program it right, it can do anything. It can be an A to D converter. It can be a DSP. It can be, it can be your interface to your digital, into Dante or whatever. Sure. These things are really amazing. They're big, expensive, powerful chips that draw a lot of, juice and do amazing things extremely quickly. They have extremely low latency and fast processing times, fast cycle times. So that's some areas. I would say digital in general, get up to speed with that. That's clearly where the world is firmly now, and certainly had it even more so. And then finally, just code, firmware. That stuff is the heart of everything that's happening now. So there's a lot of different specializations that people could focus on if they have a proclivity for it and are interested in it. There's pluses and minuses about it, to be honest. I think in areas where we're pushing into, let's say theater, live sound, things like that we traditionally weren't known for, being different isn't always good. We run into this a lot where people say, well, I'm having trouble getting the gain structure set right because it's different than this other device that I'm used to, or everyone else does it this way. Why do you do it this way? And I think that, again, comes from our background, and being engineering driven, and we have things to learn, I think, from what the market has to say about that. And we always try to. We always try to have a feedback loop that if people say, look, this could be better, or the meter should show this, or this should be 0 dBFS, not peak, or whatever, that we take that to heart, and we're learning. We try to be nimble. We try to be responsive. But the team that does that is a fairly small team. It's a couple people in engineering, myself, our president, gets involved. We really try to look at it from the user's point of view, that what is logical, what makes sense. If the goal is always to make it so that it's usable without the manual. Yeah. And that's a lofty goal. I mean, everyone kind of maybe has that same goal, but we try to approach it from what we call the virgin idiot point of view, not to be derisive by any means, but if any one of us gets too close to a project, we need to bring somebody in who isn't familiar with it and put it in front of them. And some of that is beta testing. We get it out into, let's say, a trusted cadre of people that we want to be honest with us. And, the final version has usually been through at least 1 or 2 rounds of beta testing like that before it sees the public. But it never fails that when a new product comes out, we think it's fantastic. We think it's super easy to use. And right away, there's a couple people, once they've plunked down their money, they will say, why does it do it this way? Why can't it be like this? That never fails. Right. So as good as we think we are at it, there's always another step or two, to that really refined interface. And so, we really do take that part seriously. We want it to be easy to use. And I think the biggest challenge really is that these products are incredibly complex. As I said before, I mean, there's unbelievably powerful chips inside there that have been programmed to do what we want it to do. And to make the interface user-friendly is a giant leap. Yeah. You say it's got all and especially if the unit is flexible. And that's another thing that we always try to do is add a lot of flexibility because there's such a wide range of user types. I mean, the duet system you mentioned, is something that has been used in churches and touring, but it's also on movie sets and TV studios and, as an IFB. So you go, wow, well, there's this 3 or 4 or 5 different types of users that all want to use it differently. And so the flexibility has to be there for them to say, oh, yeah, here we go. I want it to be mono, and I want it to pick up channel 1 of the 2, and here it is. I'm going to do a scan. I'm going to do a sync, and it has to work. Yeah. So what seems simple to that person could be completely foreign to someone else. And that's really, I think, the biggest challenge with any new products like that are that complex.
This video is made possible in part by our good friends at Lectrosonics. As the first and only DPA microphone dealer in Delaware, their dedication to providing the best possible sound for each of their events is uncompromising. Go behind the scenes, on the road, and into the shop in their new YouTube series. This week will be the 4th episode of their weekly series, and there's lots more to come. Find them on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and on the web at electrosoundsystems.com. Be sure to tell them we sent you.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It started when we developed the Digital Hybrid series in the early 2000s. I think it was announced in NAB 2002. The idea was that if we came out with a brand new platform, people might really get excited about it. But like you said, the installed base, there's people out there saying, but I have 12 transmitters and I have all these receivers and, why can't I just buy the new one and use it with the old one, which is what they've always been doing all along, And so we decided let me back up just 1 second. With the digital hybrid process, because it's an analog FM carrier, we figured out, hey, what we could do with the DSP along with this predictive algorithm scheme is to mimic companders. And we thought, great, that way we can make it a much easier step into the new system, which would allow you to then make it backwards compatible with the old. So someone could buy a couple new transmitters and add on to their kit or a new receiver and put it in the older, compatibility modes. That's where it started, exactly as you described. Now it's expanded, and for a long time we were the only ones doing this. I think there's a couple other companies that have realized that could be an advantage, if they're trying to sell a new device of some kind, that, hey, let's make it compatible with our own older equipment. So now that's expanded. I think we probably have more of that than anyone, but we're not the only ones anymore doing it. Yeah, it's a great question. So my take is we're really going to be their second or third wireless. Once they've gone through that and they understand more what a wireless is, what it's used for, maybe what the the shortcomings are of those systems, and then it's like, here we are, we're here for you. You've experienced that, it's lasted a year or two, and you know what you want now, and we want to be that. And I think L Series kit was a little ahead of its time. We had a hard time convincing the dealers that this is what this kit was. It's aspirational. But now, looking back the last couple of years, we introduced that kit in 2014. I think it first started shipping in 2015. Now, with a couple of years behind us, I think we got it right. But it took a while for that to get going. But now, there's dealers that see that opportunity. The guy that comes back and says, yeah, I bought these mics from you a few years ago, and this broke, and that broke, and the sound always seems a little mushy, or whatever it is, or I can never find a clean frequency, whatever the reasons are. And it's like, here you go. This will take care of all those problems. It's made out of metal. It does auto scan. It's real easy to sync up. No brainer. It's real easy to use, and it will last for years, and it sounds spectacular. We tried to pack all of that quality of digital hybrid and everything into this kit that's relatively affordable. It's still 2 or 3 times the price of the kind of kits you're talking about. Sure. So, it's still a decent leap, but we also looked at it from the point of view that these same guys are looking at prime lenses and, Canon C300s and, expensive software, like you said, to do their coloring and grading, editing, this kind of stuff, all these plugins to make their workflow easier. So this is one of those things. If we can, get them to see that, look, wow, this is, this year I'm going to buy the prime lens. Next year I'm going to buy this wireless kit and my problems will be over, kind of idea. Those guys weren't there for the Duet particularly. I know a couple of them do use it, but what's happened, and it actually goes back many, many years, the digital hybrid system, when it first came out and I first started with the company, I thought, hey, where else can we apply this technology? Who else is looking for pure sound? And 2 ideas came to mind. One was to put it in front of the test and measurement guys, the guys setting up sound systems. And so we kind of we made a variant of our plug-on transmitter that had an extra octave on the bottom, and we put it in front of them, and it caught on right away. It's become the standard. It's known as the TM400, and it's basically, a plug-on transmitter that provides phantom power to a test mic, and then you got a receiver at the other end. So it doesn't mess with the dynamics because it's not companded. And even some digital systems do some squirrely stuff with phase. So this one's fairly phase linear until you get into the lower region where there's a high pass filter, and that's easy to compensate for in your testing. So that caught on. But the other thing we did with it, we thought, guitar players are always complaining about how wireless kills their tone. And we thought, wow, what if we made a variant of our transmitter, or maybe we made a fancy cable that had a DI in it so we could get a really good clean signal into the transmitter that it might really catch on. And it did, with a fairly niche-y group of players. It turns out it's a lot of rock players and metal players. The Killers have been using it forever. Papa Roach have been using it forever. We had Slash, we had Neil Schon. Now Eva Gardner from Pink on her bass uses the system. So it just turns out that those metal guys are really into their tone, and they have never liked wireless. A lot of them have gone back to wired systems, which really kind of kills their stage freedom. So sure. Most of the guys that were there signing for us are rock guitar players that have been using our wireless for their guitar. Yeah, I was front of house and stage manager for Airmen of Note in the mid-'90s, and toured with them all over the U.S. and in Japan. So it was a lot of fun. It was fantastic. Cool. Yeah.
What kind of consoles were they using back then? What sort of systems were you guys on?
We had a Soundcraft Venue. It was our small format console, and I really liked it. It was pretty simple. It sounded good. It had enough matrix outputs and stuff. We mixed. I mixed monitors from front of house typically. Right. They just had usually a couple wedges up front for soloists. A bigger format console back then was PM3000. Yeah. So if we, we did a big tour recreating Glenn Miller's orchestra with 22 strings, big band, 5 singers. That was all done on a PM3000, and mainly that was because of the number of inputs, but also the VCA groups and some of the things that it had made submixing easier, stuff like that. So that was the two consoles I used. I think we started seeing digital. We played around with like a Yamaha 01, maybe,
Sure.
before it was even an 01V,
Yeah.
It was early days of digital consoles back then. They've always had good gear. We had fantastic microphone collection. We had Meyer sound speakers. It was fantastic. And really coming from studio background that I had into live sound, I got spoiled very quickly using the really good gear. And,
Right.
the reality for a lot of live sound folks is, especially kind of mid-range folks, is you don't have gear that nice.
Yeah.
You're dealing with all basic microphones, basic loudspeakers, nothing wrong with that stuff, but, we had it quite nice. It was a good experience. And really the area in live sound where we've made the most progress in the past couple of years is theater. And part of that is because we came out with the SSM in 2015. Believe it or not, it's been, this is the fourth year of its existence. But it was designed specifically for theater with the Limo connector on it. And it caught on. It's on a lot of Broadway shows now. It was on Beetlejuice, which opened in Washington, D.C. last fall. So that's been a lot of fun. And along with it comes the venue receivers, which, of course, is the modular 6-channel rack, per rack space, units. So we've moved a lot more of those in the past couple of years than we did before for things like that. So that's been exciting. Yeah, they're super tiny, and they weigh, I think, 2.3 ounces with a battery.
Yeah.
So I would say it's light enough for women's clothes. The belt clip design is super slim, and when you remove it, there's no sign of it at all. So usually for theater type stuff, these are in sew-ins. There's a little pocket sewed in for women's clothing. I would say that would be the same kind of thing if you want to keep it as absolutely light and small as possible. There's a couple other small transmitters out there now. But if you actually hold it side by side, they're substantially larger or thicker or heavier than this one. This is still the lightest one. So it's, like I say, it's done well. It was a Halloween costume a couple years ago. We used to have these competitions, and so the display lights up, the LEDs light up. That's the same receiver as the little one that you have, I think. You're talking about these guys.
They're the SPDR,
so,
yeah.
The SPDR. Yeah, that does look similar. First we came out with the PDR, which is the little tiny one, and a single unit and all this stuff. Basically, the idea was that there's a lot of situations when a wireless isn't practical for whatever reason. Stunts, things like that. Someone's might go in an elevator in a scene or whatever there might be, and the receiver can't be in the room with them, or just super long distances. And this thing caught on nicely. In fact, it was pretty exciting to read a couple articles recently in Sound and Picture magazine about Chris Monroe and Mission Impossible Fallout and how he used these on Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise likes to do his own stunts.
Yeah.
And so they were even doing bone conduction, to get the audio for some of the things like where he's in a C-130 and then jumps out and, that kind of stuff. So this has found use already. Now, the SPDR is the big brother, which is a 2-channel unit that'll take digital inputs or analog. It's got 2 AA batteries, so it has a really long runtime, and a temperature-compensated crystal. So this one is really designed for stereo recording, if need be, as a backup recorder in a bag system. You could certainly put it on a body. It's still fairly small. It's only a little bit bigger than a typical body pack.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of an outgrowth of, the kind of work we do in film and television.
Just one of those things that was needed, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And the quality of these is fantastic, and they're time code syncable, jam synced. So they're ready for your film set, TV kind of production, anything like that, where time code is master.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I really appreciate it, Karl. Thanks again for taking so much time out here and to show us around the booth. You guys are doing a ton of really neat stuff. It's fun to get to talk to you. So.
Well, thanks. If we have time, since we're here and we're live, you're getting a scoop on this. The Duet system, when we came out with it, the number one request was for a portable transmitter for that system. The Duet is a half rack unit. and it's designed for rack mounting, cart systems, anything like that where you've got, real estate.
Sure.
But people thought, hey, this thing looks really cool. We'd love to use it as an IFB or maybe a camera hop system, but we need a portable transmitter. And so that's what's coming out next Tuesday. The 26th is the DCHT. This is a portable transmitter that is just slightly bigger than an LT body pack.
Oh, cool.
And same battery door, same dimensions almost, just a little longer because they had to fit a few more circuits in there. This is a digital transmitter. It is basically half of a Duet rack transmitter in a body pack. It accepts digital inputs on AES or analog. It'll accept line level input, transmits on a single carrier, 2 audio channels, and digital, same thing, 50 milliwatts, 25 milliwatts, or 10 milliwatts in this tiny package.
Wow.
With the infrared sync. So, you use it just like you would use a Duet transmitter, but the idea is mount it on a bag and have your IFB feeds going to it or your camera hop feeds and over to a Duet receiver. So that's the DCHT. That's
huge. Yeah,
it is.
We'll keep an eye out for that in a couple of days. That's really exciting. Yeah, I think that's obviously going to be very popular with your crowd. So.
I think it is. Yeah, I think this is a hit. Now, one thing about it is that it's got a TA6 connector. Most of our normal transmitters have a TA5, but we had to go with a TA6 because of the real estate. And also we wanted to be able to properly handle like analog line level mic, lav mics with bias and AES digital. So we really needed one more pin to get it right. So of course we have a whole bunch of accessories, TA6 connector, split out to 2 XLRs or split out to 1 XLR for AES or split out to 2 lav mic connectors. So all that stuff's ready to go. And next week ought to be fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, very cool.
Wanted you to see it though. We're not the fastest, and being a professional only manufacturer helps. We're not really driven too much by that kind of cycle. But I would say that, look, there's really good competitors out there, and we have a lot of respect for them. Everyone is driving the state of the industry, and I think the consumers benefit from that. The users benefit from that. We basically have a medium to long-term product plan that we're executing, at all times. And the idea is really filling in cracks, mainly driven by user requests. This new transmitter is a perfect example. We came out with Duet system. We had a clear idea in mind of who would start using the system. And right away, more people came along than we expected. And they said, look, this looks great for X, Y, and Z. And, so what we need is, this. Now. So that goes into the product plan, and then we, see how all that fits together. So I would say that we come up with a major product maybe every year, every couple of years, no more than that. Sometimes it's more than one product in a year for different reasons. There'll be maybe related products or maybe not. So I think, last year we had the 941 frequency band version of our slot receiver, belt pack transmitters, plug-on transmitter, and handheld. So that was a variant of existing products that took, a good amount of time and good amount of engineering resources to develop. So that came out mid-year. Then later in the year, we had an antenna, or I guess that was early this year, the powered,
paddle,
or non-powered, paddle. That's a new one. So that was about it. I think the SPDR came out last year, which is, obviously not related to the other two things at all. This year, this is a thing coming up for just in front of the NAB show. And we may have another product or two this year if they get finished,
Sure.
That's about it. So we can't really manage to do much more than that. There are things like that. Yeah. There's kind of keystone products that you would say, look, professional users, they're sensitive to price, but they need tools to get a certain type of job done. So, it's not whatever it costs. I mean, if we came out with a receiver that was $10,000 for one channel, no one would buy it. I mean, that there's just economic realities of it because they can look around at other things. So price is some consideration, and it really depends on what the product is and what it's supposed to do as to how sensitive we are to the pricing. Something like the L series was designed to be a step up from the E&G kits that are, like you said, $600, $700, $800. And so we really tried hard to keep costs managed. And even still, it's 2 or 3 times, the price of those systems. But it could have been more, if we weren't careful.
Sure.
So it really depends on the intended market we're aiming it at, exactly what function it's supposed to serve. I would say we at the top of the list, for priorities is different every time for every product. For this one, it was size and weight. That was absolutely number one. And it would have a LEMO connector. Those 3 things were just, given it's going to do these things.
Yeah.
So everything else flowed from that. What kind of materials were used, the fact that it had to all work on one circuit board, and the entire design was driven by size and weight. And, for something like this, it wasn't, as important to have it be super microscopic, but we wanted to have it be manageable. People told us, well, it could be the size of like a T4, that'd be okay because that'll fit in a bag. And we thought, no, that's not small enough. We wanted as close to a belt pack as possible. So size drove this too, but really it was more, look, we gave up, what is that, 1/4 of an inch,
right,
compared to this. So size wasn't the number one most important thing. For something like a handheld, ergonomics were important. We wanted to make it sleek, to fit in the hand well, to be well balanced, and to perform well. So every product really has a different set of the top 5 criteria that it has to meet, and from there, then what else can we do, or what else do we have to sacrifice? That's what happens.
That's all for this time with Karl. If you're interested in finding out more about the kit that we had on loan, jump over to the website. I'm going to link a bunch of videos that Karl has there on their YouTube channel that go through absolutely every detail of each one of these components. He's got some really good, fully in-depth videos. You'll definitely want to check those out, and they'll all be linked over at DcSoundOp.com. We'll also have some links over there to the new camera hop system they just announced, and that's a really exciting new development. Looking forward to seeing one of those in person soon, and hopefully getting to give that a try. Very, very exciting piece of technology there that I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy. This kit that we've had is an absolutely awesome step up for anyone looking for just uncompromising audio. If you need to go out and know that your audio is going to work, if you work alone or with a small crew like we do, it's really, really incredible having the tools that this kit provides with things like Smart Tune and being really flexible, being able to reconfigure on the fly as you move through different spaces or from one job to another. It's a fantastic step up if you've experienced some of the lower price wireless and you're ready for just a little bit more professional kit. This is definitely a really smart option to look at. When you add in the support and service that Lectrosonics provides for all of their equipment to the industry, and then the user base in the industry that all support each other online and help, it's really nice to know that when you go out on a gig with this gear, you're not really alone. You can jump on one of those user groups practically in the middle of the night and somebody will probably answer one of your questions. And that's a big plus for using this gear out in the field where reliability and being able to get the job done matters the most. I have to thank Karl again sincerely for being so generous with his time and his knowledge, sharing it here and in the booth at NAMM when we saw him there. I really hope we get to have him back here on the channel to talk again in the future, and I encourage you to leave any questions you might have for him down in the comments below, and hopefully we'll be able to ask those next time we talk. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time, and we'll see you again soon.